Hello and welcome to today's office hours presentations. This is Paul Hoyt. Our office hours presentation is a relaxed, informal mentoring program that we do every Monday at noon Pacific time, almost every Monday. All the recording slides and exercises are available in the tribe area of our website, and all these recordings are available on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/user/Paul Hoyt. The reasons we do these is because being a successful small business owner can be a great experience, but I also know that it's tough. You need education, training, tools, and team to be successful. And I want you to get to know me because when you do, you'll know that I really do care about you. And I want you to succeed in your life, in every area of your life, whatever that means to you. I want you to find the greatness, the happiness, the divinity that you have within yourself, and then remember it, embrace it, and live it every single day. Our passion is to increase the survival rate, accelerate the growth rate, and reduce the struggle rate of businesses in America. And our vision is to help millions of CEOs and entrepreneurs accelerate their business growth and enjoy greater harmony and balance in their lives. And if you find these office hours presentations beneficial to you, or any of the ways in which we nurture our community of CEOs and entrepreneurs and reach out to people and give them support, please pass the word along. Invite people to join us on an online presence or in office hours, and so that they can get the value out of the system that you have seen as well. Our office hours agendas is that we have an in-depth discussion of a business success principle. We offer some closing remarks, special offers, and invitations to next week's session. Then we go into open questions and answers and coaching. So as we go through today's office hours presentation, be thinking about your questions or topics of discussion, and we'll address them at the end of the call. I invite you to join us in the Awakened CEO communities on both LinkedIn and Facebook, where we publish a business success principle of the day on both Facebook and LinkedIn 4 days a week, and we do an energy of the day posting every day on Facebook. During the call today, I also encourage you to join us in our Awakened CEO community and make comments and ask questions and share insights there and takeaways. Our goal is to get 20 comments and likes in the Facebook group. I invite you to the Awakened CEO Conversation presentation that we are doing this Wednesday, July the 22nd, which is an interactive webinar with one of our own, a longtime community member and somebody I greatly admire and respect. Raleigh Rollis will be my guest on our Awakened Conversation this Wednesday, which is July the 22nd at 6 p.m. Pacific time. Watch your emails for sign-up information. I know you're not going to want to miss that as we talk to Raleigh about his journey of business growth, personal growth, and professional growth. Today's topic is on the illusions of entrepreneurship, the costly myths that entrepreneurs, investors, and policymakers live by, which is based on the book by the same title by Scott Shane, who is a PhD. As usual, we take the subject matter today and relate it to one of our key performance areas. And today it's all about leadership. It's about not only leadership for you individually as a CEO and an entrepreneur, but it's about governmental leadership. It's about policy leadership. It's about political leadership as well, which I'm very excited to get into. As always, we try to relate the subject matter of the day to one or the more elements of our Awakened CEO system, which is our focus is always on mindset, methods, and momentum. And today it's about all three. It's about having a proper mindset towards supporting new businesses as they grow, providing information on the methods of growing a business, and helping them get into momentum. In our agenda today, we're going to talk a little bit about the author, Scott Shane. We'll talk about the myths of the startups. We'll talk about public policy, the challenges that he sees and I see, his suggestions and my suggestions, and then we're going to sum it all up to the bottom line. First, let's talk a little bit about the author. Scott Shane is a PhD professor at Case Western University. He's a graduate of the Wharton School of Business, which is one of the most famous business schools in the United States. He is also, by the way, an angel investor and the author of 11 books, the one that we're going to talk about today, and 10 others, many of which are contrarian. So he has a tendency to be outspoken and to offer a perspective that essentially nobody else is offering, which I really like. In this book, he offers some 57 different myths of startups that he is debunking in the book. And now we're going to just talk about 5 or 6 of those myths about what startups are today and then why he is debunking them. First myth that he debunks is that startups generate innovation. The second one is that they create a lot of jobs for the United States. The third one is that they produce a lot of wealth for the owners of those startups and for those who invest in those startups. Fifth is that they transform economic regions. And sixth is that they are a great experience. And seventh is that the U.S. leads the world in entrepreneurship. None of these myths about startups in the United States are true according to his academic research and really scientific research. Let's take the last one first. In global entrepreneurship, we've always thought about ourselves, and I think I've often said that the United States is the bastion of capitalism for the free world. But as it turns out, we actually have a very low ranking in the percentage of capita that actually starts and has their own small businesses. It's really not, we're really not entrepreneurial compared to a lot of other countries. The number one entrepreneurial country in the world is Turkey, with 30% of the population having their own businesses. Number 9 on the list, and of course there's a lot of them on the list, is 9 on the list is 17% with the Ireland, and 14 on the list is the United Kingdom with 11%, and we're actually 23rd on the list with only 7.2% of the people in the United States who have their own business who would be considered to be entrepreneurs. Now that's still a lot. There's 350 million people in the United States. So 7% comes to about 22 million businesses in the United States. But per capita, it's not as many as we see in many other countries. And here's the reason why, is because the truth is that the wealthier a country is, the lower the startup rate. So when we take a look at those countries who are ahead of us in the startup rate, in the entrepreneurial rate, it's generally because those countries have less per capita wealth than does the United States. And I know that we see that here in the United States too, because during recessionary times, the ones that we had in 2000, 2001 timeframe, and the one we recently went through in the 2008 through 2010 timeframe, we saw the start rate of businesses go up quite a bit. We saw the rate that franchises were expanding go up quite a bit because, frankly, there weren't that many jobs available. When unemployment is very, very low and businesses are hiring and businesses have a hard time finding people to help them join them in their expansion opportunities, then people go out and start a business for themselves because they have fewer options in corporate America. Many people who would never start a business on their own if they could find a job find themselves in a position of having to start their own business because they can't find good quality employment elsewhere. So that's why, by the way, that the United States does not lead the world in global entrepreneurship. It's because our standard of living is higher than other countries, and many people have the opportunity to take what I think is a much easier path, which is working for somebody else. The challenges that he sees is that most startups are not innovative, and that he actually lists a lot of statistics in this book to show that many, many of our innovations and most of our patents, by a long shot, the overwhelming amount of the actual patents that are filed actually are filed on behalf of very large companies. And frankly, that makes a lot of sense to me too, because my experiences with small businesses is that they may have innovations to start the business and file patents to begin the business, but then all of their focus and attention is on leveraging their uniqueness in the marketplace. It's in leveraging the intellectual property that they do have and the 1 or 2 innovations that they may have come up with, instead of bringing a lot more innovations to the market, which, by the way, is absolutely the right thing for them to do. If you have a market position and you can establish a beachhead, then the way that you grow the business is by focusing on leveraging the investment that you've made before, not on inventing new things. He specifies that most businesses are jobs for the business owner instead of being focused on hiring a lot of employees. And that, I think, is absolutely true as well. Most businesses are just turn out to be jobs for the business owner where they hire one or two people as opposed to rapid expansion and hiring dozens and dozens of people. He also says the failure rates are 50% over 4 years, and I think that that's charitable. You've heard me say on many office hours presentations that if you count the people who start a business part-time, and especially those who go into home-based businesses or network marketing or multi-level marketing businesses, I think the failure rate is more like 90% or 91, 92%, as opposed to just 50%. The failure rate is 50% amongst those who hire employees and pay a lot of taxes on their business. I think it's much worse for those who never hire employees, or if you include the ones who never hire employees and don't pay business taxes because they never were profitable in their business. He says that 80% of businesses don't have any employees, and I think that that's right. When I was on the board of directors of the Chamber of Commerce, what we saw was that 85% of our Chamber of Commerce members had 5 or fewer employees at their companies. So they were micro businesses, a business that had 5 or fewer people at it. That's the way that I define the term micro business. And that's very true as well, which means, by the way, that we're not having a lot of employment opportunities for those who would seek employment. And he says that most entrepreneurs have low aspirations. And I don't think that that's true, by the way. I think that many entrepreneurs have big aspirations when they start, that they want to start a business that has $1 million, $2 million, $10 million, $20 million, $100 million in revenue. But after a while, they lower their expectations once they get started, because starting and growing a business can be so tough. Once they get into it, they realize the challenges of sales, the challenges of marketing, and the challenges of delivering on a mass scale, and they lower their expectations, and all of a sudden they become satisfied with, a few $100,000 or maybe even $50,000 or $80,000 a year in annual income, mostly because they're just happy to keep their head above water and survive in their business. Other challenges he talks about is the typical 10-year-old business owner is only making 65% of what they would if they were working for somebody else. And I know that's true from personal experience, and I know that's true from talking to many, many other entrepreneurs as well. The average entrepreneur makes less money, works more hours, and has more of a variable income than they would if they were working for somebody else. And frankly, many, many entrepreneurs out there are struggling because it's not really a great experience for them at all. Now, he suggests, by the way, given this body of knowledge, given these myths that he is debunking, the myth of having great wealth, the myth of hiring a lot of people, the myth of contributing heavily to innovation, he suggests that the federal government that only invest in growing companies and not startups. He suggests that we shift company or governmental policy so that the governments are only investing in and subsidizing in companies that hire employees, as opposed to the programs that we have on the books for helping startups get started. He really does suggest that the government should subsidize only those companies that are attractive to private investors. And we should all think like venture capitalists, which I think is a very interesting perspective. And he himself is an angel investor. So I can see his point in saying that, as angel investors and as venture capitalists, we don't invest in every business that we see, that we take a look at the risk of that business, and we only invest in those that we think can give us a great positive return, and we suggest that the government does the same, which is an interesting perspective. My challenges with the approach that he has is that, number one, is that he doesn't offer ways to improve the success rate or the growth rate of small businesses other than lobby for additional governmental programs to invest in those businesses that have demonstrated their ability to expand. And frankly, he says by decreasing the funds that are available for the startup businesses, And I have a big challenge with that, and that challenge is that we wouldn't have growing companies without having startups. And I think there would be a lot more people on public assistance or be in jobs that they didn't like if we did not have the governmental assistance that we have through a variety of programs from the SBA and the programs that they have in business. I mean, when the jobs aren't there, the jobs aren't there. And oftentimes I see people fall back in a desperation to launch their own business, either because they can't find a job or frankly because they can't hold down a job. Some business owners are really best suited to be captain of their own ship because they're not a very good crew member of somebody else's ship. So we need to support those people, I believe. And I think it really takes us back to being reminded about why we are entrepreneurs in the first place. We are entrepreneurs because we want to be our own bosses. We want control of our business. Any survey that's led out there, or I'd say rather many surveys have been performed on why people start their own business, and this is always the number one choice, is because we want to be in control of our own fate. We want to be our own boss. We don't want to get reorganized out of existence. We don't want to have somebody change the quota on us or the sales compensation plan on us. We don't want to have our division sold off to somebody else. We don't want to have our division shut down. We don't want to have our company sold to somebody else. We want to be our own boss so that we have more safety and security in the jobs that we are able to create for ourselves in the form of our own business. The second reason why people are entrepreneurs is creativity. We want to do our own thing. We feel stymied in a corporate position where people won't listen to us and the great ideas that we have are not enacted or acted upon. So we start our own businesses so that we can leverage our own creativity and leverage our own great ideas to our benefit. We start businesses because of the possibilities. We know, many of us know, that we're never going to get rich working for somebody else. That the only way that we're ever going to get rich, to have that possibility, is to be in our own business. That's where we see the opportunities for great wealth. And the fourth reason that we're entrepreneurs is self-actualization. And I think that's to be the best that we can be. And frankly, I think our governmental policies could really be focused on helping people be the best that they can be through personal development programs, professional development programs, and business growth programs, as we do in the Awakened CEO community. My suggestions are that the answer isn't fewer startups or less support. I think it's better support. I'm a huge fan of knowing that if we just educated, trained, and mentored new and prospective business owners better, that they would struggle less, that they would grow faster, and that they would hire more people because they would have an easier time at their business. So to me, the answer is not less support for startup businesses. It is better support for startup businesses in giving them the mentoring, the guidance, and the support that they really need, in addition to the ways in which the government is supporting people today. I do, however, really like the idea of subsidizing and incentivizing those who are receiving investment capital and or hiring employees. I think he's got something going here. If we could find, for example, through partnership with angel investors and partnerships with venture capital funds, to offer developmental dollars for the people that they were already investing in, I think that might be a really good shift of public policy. And in just a second, I'll talk to you about how the government is actually doing that today in what I think is a very small way. But here's a look into current public policy. Current public policy has loan guarantees, some subsidies, regulatory exemptions for some companies, tax benefits, and in many cases, preferential treatment for some small businesses out there. First of all, tax credits. With tax credits, just some examples of some tax credits, which are typically, by the way, state by state instead of federally based. In California, we have a new employment tax credit, but unfortunately, it's in designated areas only, and there's lots of restrictions on that. The IRS passed a HIRE Act, which stood for hiring incentives to restore employment, but unfortunately, that was only in 2011. I would like to see both state and federal government offer a lot more programs to incentivize people who are growing their business through tax credits, such as new employee tax credits and revenue enhancement tax credits. Instead of taxing businesses more that are having greater revenues, I think perhaps if we gave people a tax credit when they were accelerating their business growth, for example, give people a tax credit when they moved from $100,000 to $250,000 in revenue, to keep them, say, at the previous tax rate for a year or so to really help fuel their expansion would make a lot of sense to me. The government does offer loan programs today. SBA offers loan programs where they offer guarantees to banks who are making loans to small businesses to encourage those bank loans. In California, we have small business development corporations, which are 11 nonprofit government organizations, or loan guarantees programs from the state of California, where the guarantee is from the state. The SBA, of course, is a federal program. California has a small business development corporations, and in your state, they may also have state-based loan guarantee or loan subsidy programs as well. The federal government also has Federal Community Development Financial Institutions Fund, the FCDFI, I believe it's called, fund that they have, where they offer tax credits, loan guarantees, and assistance more to economic regions, especially when a region has been depressed a little bit. So there are loan programs available where the federal government and state government does subsidize in some way the loaning of money to small businesses. There's also programs called the Small Business Investment Corporation, where you have privately owned and managed funds that are licensed by the SBA, where they use their own funds, public funds, and SBA guaranteed loans to come to the benefit of the company, of companies that are getting started out there. So, and this, by the way, is one of the examples that I think that we are actually doing some of the things that Dr. Shane recommends and what I recommended as well, where we have a public-private partnership where when we find investors who are willing to invest in a company, that the government themselves will come in and says, if you're willing to invest, then we are willing to loan and we are willing to back up and enhance your investment through those loans. So the Small Business Investment Corps have been around for a very long time. They started in 1958. In 2013, which was the last records that I was able to see, they started 34 new funds, but 27 funds shut down, so there was only a net gain of 7 there. But there are 292 funds around the country in which we allow angel investors or investment funds, more like venture funds really than an angel investors, to invest in companies, and the federal government may have federally backed loan programs to subsidize those. Here's the unfortunate part. In 2013, even though they provided $3.5 billion in financing, it was only for 1,068 businesses, and that's down from 1,400 businesses that they had helped just a few years before. Now, that sounds like a lot, 1,000 businesses or 1,400 businesses, but there's 22 million small businesses in the United States, 80% of whom have no employees, and 85% have 5 or fewer employees. So it's helping a very, very small fraction of the businesses in the United States through these small business investment corporations. And here's the bottom line. I think that incentives for small businesses and those who are making successful strides in growing their business make a tremendous amount of sense. Investing in startup businesses makes sense, and investing in expanding businesses, I think, is a fantastic idea. I would really like to see the state governments and the federal governments increase their programs so that if you could demonstrate the ability to attract the interest of angel investors and venture capital funds, that the federal government and the state government would pitch in as well and say, if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for us, because Lord knows that the venture capital funds especially, and angel groups and sophisticated angel investors, you have some very strict criteria for the businesses in which they invest. But I'd also like to see the government invest a lot more in training, education, and mentoring programs too, because right now they really don't do a lot. With the small business development centers and some other subsidized program, they offer some training programs, but they don't, for example, offer long-term mentorship or really intensive community support, which I think are two of the biggest things that are lacking in the United States today when it comes to small business success. Bottom line is, I think our government could do a lot better. And one of the things that I found in reading this book, The Illusions of Entrepreneurship, which essentially says, you know, all of you folks who are getting ready to start and grow a business, the picture is not nearly as rosy as you think that it's going to be. I think it makes a lot of sense to listen to the contrarians. There is a school of thought out there that says that everybody should have a devil's advocate, should have that pesky person on their board of advisors, or maybe even on their board of directors that says, wait just a minute, this might not be such a darn good idea, because if we're all just patting each other on the back and saying, great idea, you know, like we're all like playing Family Feud and saying, great answer, then we're never going to hear the opinions of those people who have a contrarian point of view. And those opinions and those insights, I think, can be extremely valuable to us. So I encourage you to listen to the contrarians in your life just a little bit so that you can get benefit from their good ideas. As I oftentimes say, let's focus on the problem about 5% of the time and focus on the solution 95% of the time. But if we fail to focus on the problem 5% of the time, the solutions that we have are not going to be nearly as valuable and not nearly as effective. That's our presentation for today. We talked about the author, we talked about the myths of startup, we talked about public policies, we talked about the challenges that he defined and the myths that he was debunking in his book. We listened to his suggestions. I offered some suggestions of my own and wrapped it all up with the bottom line. So here's the homework. I encourage you to get the book and read it, as I do every time that I do a book review on any of the fairly fantastic business books that we offer and talk about here on our Office Hours program. Get this book and read it to honor the author, and because there's certainly a lot more insights in the book than I was able to share with you today. He actually debunked 57 myths, and we only talked about 5 or 6 of them. I encourage you to talk to your tax accountants and your local chambers of commerce about tax credits and other incentive programs that may be available to you in your local community. We always have the federal programs, but there are state and local and regional programs as well. And look up and become friends with the local SBA about their assistance programs. The SBA, you can call the local SBA offices, or you can look up and find out where the nearest small business development center is, or the local SCORE programs are, and get familiar and comfortable with the SBA about their programs, because that's the federal program that supports small businesses. And in your particular program community, like there is here where I live in California, you might find a very robust and aggressive program on behalf of the state to support small businesses as well. The number one thing that I really want you to do, by the way, is to get profitable and hire people, to get profitable in your own business, to get that right with sales and delivery and marketing and financial management, so that you see the expansion opportunities and you can go hire people for your business, full-time employees, part-time employees, more and better contractors, so that you can grow your business. I'm going to open it up for questions and answers and coaching here in just a minute, where we're going to have comments and questions on the topic of the day, and then any other issues that you'd like for us to talk about here in our Office Hours presentation. I want you to tell me what your biggest takeaways were from the presentations, the insight that you gained, and what you're going to focus on as well. Here at the Hoyt Management Group, our support services fall into 3 different categories. We have programs where we teach you and educate you so that you can go do it by yourself. And we have programs where we do it with you, where we help you develop product funnels, write business plans, develop strategic plans, do financial models, etc. And in some cases, we will actually do it for you, take on an operational role at your company and do things for you, put fingers on the keyboard, and have deliverables associated with our engagements where you can throw things over the wall and trust that they'll be done to high quality and in a timely manner. I want to remind you that our next Awaken CEO conversation is this Wednesday, July the 22nd at 6 p.m. with our special guest, Raleigh Rawlis, who has been a longtime member of the Awaken CEO community and a longtime attendee of these office hours presentations, is actually on the call with us again today, which does not surprise me at all. I'm really looking forward to getting you to know Raleigh a little bit more and myself to get him to know a little bit more. So watch your emails for the sign-up information. That's this Wednesday at 6 p.m. Our next office hours will be next Monday, July the 27th. The topic is to be determined. I've got some ideas about what I want to talk about, but we'd love to hear your suggestions. Just go to paulsurvey.com or reach out and talk to us here at the Hoyt Management Group in any way that you can. And in between now and next Wednesday and now and next Monday, we encourage you to do your homework. And with that, we're going to go into comments and questions mode, first on the topic of the day and then any other issues that you have. Stephanie, do we have any comments or questions on today?
We do. Got one question, and then Kat has been interacting with you behind the scenes over here, so I'd like to open up the lines and have a chat with her as well.
Why don't we start right there? Because I know Kat shares the heart that I've got for really helping small businesses. She's also a veteran. And I know Raleigh, by the way, as you'll learn on Wednesday, Raleigh is the owner of a company called the Veteran Small Business Association. Sorry, Raleigh. So Kat is a veteran. Raleigh supports veterans. I love veterans as well. Kat, I've taken you off mute, and you are welcome to share with us and ask any questions that you like.
Hello, nice to be with you guys today.
Hi.
Hi. The biggest thing, I think my biggest takeaway from today is, you know, even being a female veteran in business, I've always felt like I'm doing it by myself. And yes, I would love to get to the point where I'm profitable and hiring people, and it's just, it feels like it's been a constant struggle. And I had a conversation with one of my coaches this morning that said, really, to be successful in starting an entrepreneur business, you want to, and actually I learned this from the CEO space as well, but I've been told to have 6 months of revenue to make sure you're taking care of your business properly in terms of marketing, building the type of business that you want, having your client management programs in place, that type of thing. So would you confirm that? Because I'm at that point where I really want to get my business up and running, but yet a bridge loan, a small business loan, a grant, something, you know, would be incredibly helpful for me to not have to worry so much about attracting clients and bringing finances. And I'm a solopreneur, so I'm doing it all myself.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. I'm going to put you back on mute for just a second while I answer, and then I'm going to take you off mute for your feedback and follow-up. The general guidance, by the way, the general guidance out there is not 6 months worth of working capital, it's 2 years worth of working capital. That is the general guidance I know that I got when I started my first business in 1980, and I thought, I don't need that. But the truth is that that's really a pretty good idea. As much funds as you can have set aside for your own personal financial needs it can be very, very handy. You know, so if you have $100,000 to start a business, set aside 50 for yourself and take 50 to grow the business so that you don't have to worry about paying the mortgage and paying the rent or paying your car payments or really going to a heavy credit card debt in order to give yourself a decent runway and a decent time to ramp up and start your business. So generally speaking, I think, you know, the more capital, the merrier. Unfortunately, what I see with so many small businesses is they might have $50,000 or $70,000 or $30,000, but they go spend it all in the first 60 days on, you know, programs that they think are really going to help them take their business forward. And then they find themselves in a very unfortunate position of having to scramble to actually make ends meet and put food on the table. I've seen some really terrible examples of that. So the bottom line is the more that you can reserve to take care of yourself and your family from a personal financial point of view before you get started in the business, the better off that you're going to be. Second point I want to make is that I'm becoming pretty convinced that being a solopreneur is a bad idea. That the books that I have read and all of the advice that I see from so many people out there suggests that really it takes 2 or 3 people in order to give yourself a decent shot at starting a small business. The biggest reason is because you need different mindsets and different skill sets. I did an office hours presentation on a book called Nail It Then Scale It some time ago. Can't remember what the number was. But in that book, a very, very experienced venture capitalist suggested that he would never invest in a business that didn't have 3 different roles managed by the principals. He said you can do it with 2 people, you can almost never do it with 1 person. And he said every company needs an engineer, they need a salesperson, and they need a visionary. He actually called them the hacker, the huckster, and the hopeful, which I like that terminology a lot. But it's very difficult for 1 person to have all 3 of those mindsets, to really be a hard-charging, very successful salesperson, and to be a visionary, and to be the engineer who actually invents the products, and an operations-focused person who actually gets the job done. Very, very difficult. So I'm convinced that if people would just do 2 things, that we would really increase the success rate of small businesses. And that's number 1 is don't go into business by yourself, but always try to go into business with a partner to make sure that you have all 3 of those critical roles covered at your business. And then secondly, to make sure that you're taking care of your own personal financial needs for many, many months before you jump off and do the business full time. You might want to work yourself into it by going part-time, but sometimes there are businesses that you just can't do part-time, that you either all in or nothing in at all. So hopefully that was helpful to you. Kat, I'm going to take you off of mute and invite you to have a little follow-up there for just a minute.
The primary question I would have on the follow-up is, so I agree with everything that you said, and how do we obtain or create that 2-year cushion in order to launch the business in the first place? Because I feel like I've been working really well, my business, and I've gotten it to a good place by myself. However, I cannot expand, I cannot grow, I'm limited on my resources and my income now because it's just enough to maintain where we're at.
Yeah.
It's not enough to ramp it up for marketing or for me to hire somebody else, or even you know what I mean? Like, how do I obtain that wealth in order to be able to have that freedom for the 2 years?
That's a really great question. I'm going to give you a small answer now, and maybe we'll have a longer answer a little bit later on. I know at my 4th office hours program that I did, I think it was number 4, was also the highest attendance that I've had, live attendance that I've had on any office hours presentation. There were like 47 people who attended that office hours live, which I thought it was really on a roll. But it just turned out that the subject matter was of high interest to them. The name of that office hours was What to Do When You Have No Money. And we had lots and lots of people tune in because they wanted to know what to do when you had no money. So we talked about various funding options for expanding a business. And you're kind of in expansion mode. You're past startup mode. You're almost to that financial stability mode, although with most businesses, it kind of goes ups and down. You'll have a couple of good months and then not a good month, and it's hard to say that you're financially stable when income is so variable. And the reason why income is so variable with most small businesses is because it's really a challenge to focus on both sales and delivery. It's a challenge to focus on it from a time allocation model, but it's really hard to focus on it from a mindset. The mindset of a salesperson is different than the mindset of a consultant or a coach or a person who's focused on delivery. So switching mindsets can be one of the biggest challenges that small businesses have. So there are a lot of options available to you. You could do a crowdfunding program where you sell something in advance to kind of to give yourself a boost in income by taking orders for products today that you would deliver tomorrow. You can borrow money either from family or friends or through SBA-backed loan programs, or you might be able to interest private investors in purchasing an equity in your business, or you may be able to take on a partner in your business. So those are some basic ways of expanding your business that you might have right now. To recap, that's take on a partner, take on private equity investments, get a loan of some kind, or do a crowdfunding program to pre-order or to pre-sell stuff that you would deliver later on to give yourself an opportunity boost. I hope that's helpful to you, Kat. I look forward to our next conversation because I know you and I share an equal passion when it comes to helping small businesses get started and grow, and especially those who are veterans. Stephanie, do we have other questions?
Yeah, let's see. Are there any additional myths that, based on your experience, you would add to the list? That's Jeff's question if he's still here.
You know, I would say the number one myth that I see that he didn't address directly is the myth of the A-plus player. The myth that says, I am really good in corporate America at what I do. You know, I'm smarter than the others people. I have great relationships with people. I work my fanny off. Therefore, I know that I would be successful as an entrepreneur. But the truth is that the mindset and the skill set that you have in corporate America that makes you successful in a company, in a big company, does not play well when it comes to small business success. That's what Michael Gerber in his book, The E-Myth, calls the, what did he call it? He calls it, I can't remember the name of it right now, but he calls it the fundamental flaw, or the fatal assumption, excuse me, that's it. He calls it the fatal assumption. The fatal assumption of somebody, so for example, who's a carpenter working for another carpentry shop is, the fatal assumption is because I'm a great carpenter, I know it'd be great at running a business of carpentry. Because I'm a great computer programmer, I know that I would be great at running a computer programming business. Because I am a great corporate executive, I know that I would be great at managing a business that was much smaller in size. And it's really not true, because you don't get the education, you don't get the training, you don't get the grounding is small business success principles when you're working for a larger corporation. So to me, that's the number one myth that he doesn't debunk in this one, primarily because there's a whole book called The E-Myth that talks about the fatal assumption and how A-plus players, people who are very bright, work their fannies off, know how to have great relationships and work with other people really well, don't necessarily have an easy time at all when it comes to being a CEO and entrepreneur, because they don't have the specific training that's necessary for them to learn what they need to learn so they can do what they need to do in order to be successful. Next topic, Stephanie.
Well, Jeff's on the line. Would you like to open his line and get his feedback?
Sure, I will. Jeff, I'm going to take you off mute right now. You're off mute, Jeff.
Well, hi, Paul. Great session. I especially liked your insight about the perspective of the engineer, the salesperson, and the visionary.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a small business family. My parents had 9 dry cleaning stores that they ran for 35 years.
Excellent.
My father was in business with his brother, and I wonder if you have any perspective. Growing up in that environment, I thought that the right way to have a business is to be the solopreneur. I love your term, because that way no one can overrule you. And what I observed through my father and his brother, my uncle, was that if there was a difference of opinion, it was very difficult to resolve because there were only 2 people, no one to break the tie.
Yeah, I'm going to put you back on mute here while I answer. I think that that's a really good point. I think you have to find a way to break the tie, and it could be that one person gets to be the CEO for this year and another person gets to be the CEO the next year, but you need to have a way to resolve it and to have a tiebreaker. And that can, by the way, be an outside business advisor or coach. You can invite your CPA and your attorney to offer their opinions as well and take the advice of other people if you can't make a decision. So my belief is that if 2 people really focused on it, that they could find a way of breaking that tie in a way that they mutually agreed was going to be a fair way to break that tie. And it could be going to a third party to cast their vote to break the tie, or it could be that we take turns being the CEO. You get to be CEO this year, I'll be the CEO next year. And in the case of a tie, the person who's on the throne this year gets to make the final decision, and the other person support him entirely. The other point that I want to make here is I think you said that they own 35 dry cleaning stores. To me, that's by the talents and the skill set, the mindset, the way that you work in the business to run a business of that size with 35 dry cleaning stores. Let's just, that's dozens of millions of dollars a year in revenue. Even if a dry cleaning store was only $250,000 a year in revenue, that's a $4 million enterprise, and my guess is it was much larger than that, much larger than that. Well, to run an enterprise that's $10 or $20 million in revenue is a much different game than starting a business to start off with. That's kind of what the fatal assumption is really all about. We know that we've got the skill set to run a $10 million business unit within a large corporation, or we have the skill set to run a $20 million company. Therefore, we must have the skill set, the mindset that's necessary to start a business from scratch, and it's not the same. A small business, especially a startup business, is not the same thing as a small large business or a smaller large business. That's the point that's made loud and clear in the small business or the startup owner's manual, which I reviewed a few weeks ago, and the lean startup methodology. The point being that a startup business is not the same thing as a smaller version of a large business. And likewise, a business that is just getting started doesn't have the same challenges, doesn't need to have the same mindset as a business that's got $5 to $10 to $20 million in revenue. Hopefully that was helpful to you as well. Stephanie, I'll invite you to chime in, and I'll invite you to also ask the next question.
Okay, the next question. How do I get an SBA loan? I heard that the paperwork is extremely rigorous.
It really can be. I actually had an SBA loan when I started my first business in 1981, I think it was, 80 or 81. I think I thought about it in 80 and actually started in 81. I did have an SBA loan, so Lord knows that was a while ago, wasn't it? 35 years ago when I got my first and only SBA loan. But I've talked to lots of people who've gotten SBA loans since then. We may actually address this in another office hours presentation in more detail, but here's the skinny on an SBA loan. An SBA loan is a loan that's made from a traditional bank like Chase or Wells Fargo or US Bank or somewhere like that, Bank of America, but the loan is guaranteed up to a particular level by the federal government. So the federal government paperwork, there's paperwork for the federal government and there's paperwork for the bank itself. The bank will typically want you to guarantee the loan, and they generally won't loan it to you if you're a poor credit risk. So for example, if your credit score is 500 or 600, you're not likely to get the loan because the bank won't want to loan you the money, and the SBA won't want to back the loan if you have that low of a credit score. But if your credit score is marginal, in the 580, 600, 630 range, where the bank might not normally loan you the money, they will loan you the money if the federal government will guarantee a significant portion of that loan. And typically they guarantee them up to about 80%. So the bank takes 20% of the risk and the federal government takes 80% of the risk when it comes to whether or not you're going to pay back the loan. So it's the best way to get an SBA loan is to talk to your local bank, your business bank, and see if they have an SBA loan program. Talk to the local Chamber of Commerce about the largest SBA-backed loan banks in your particular area, and then talk to an SBA lending specialist at either your bank or one of those other banks and ask them what the application process is. And you may qualify for an SBA loan. Even though the bank, your business will not qualify for the loan, you may personally qualify for an SBA-backed business loan. Hopefully that was helpful to you. Your comments or next question, Stephanie?
Okay, got some more questions here.
Okay.
How do I find out more about small business investment corps?
You know, I don't know a lot about them. I did research on the small business investment corps just for the purposes of this presentation, because I knew I'd heard about them and they were in the back of my mind. And now after I did my research, I find out why I hadn't heard about them. Well, there's 292 of them, but they only help 1,000 businesses. So that means they're only making like 3 investments or 3 loans per fund, maybe 4, you know, every single year. And they're only helping what, 1/10 of 1% or 1/100th of 1% of the businesses that are out there. So I think it might be a call to the local SBA, or just do an internet search for those particular companies and see if you can't find one that's in your area and that you can talk to and ask more about the programs. But I think although I think it's a really great idea, I don't frankly know the reason why there's not more funds available, why they're not helping more companies, and why more people don't know about them. My suspicion is that it has to do with the paperwork and the registration requirements, because it is a private investment fund that has gone through, I think, a lot of hoops in order to be validated by the Small Business Administration so that this SBA will actually loan money to those companies in which the fund invests. So that would be the place that I would start. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Next question or comment from the folks on the line.
Next question.
Okay.
What about grant programs?
Grant programs are interesting. You know, there's been a lot of I would say con artists saying, give me your money and I'll get you associated with federal grant programs. To my knowledge, there is no such thing as a federal grant program. There is no such thing as state grant programs. Grant programs are not a matter of public policy or public institutional funding. Grant programs come from foundations and trusts and other charitable interests who grant money. You know, they give away money. They're a charity that gives away money, and there are foundations out there that give away money to people who would want to start or expand a business. There are trusts that would do it, family trusts, for example, or other charitable institutions that would do that. But as far as I know, there is no such thing as a federally backed or a state-backed grant program. There are subsidies in the forms of tax credits. There are subsidies in the forms of loan guarantees. There are subsidies in the form of training programs from the SBA, which can be subsidized training programs. But I don't know of any grant programs. What I do know is that there have been many con artists out there that say, send me your $100 and I'll put you in touch with grant programs. There are programs for disadvantaged business enterprises, which I may address in a future office hours presentation as well, that offer preferential treatment for those people who are minority business owners, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, service-disabled veteran-owned businesses, and those businesses who are in hub zones, and for those businesses that qualify for the government's 8A program. But they're preferential treatment programs in terms of granting them, you know, contracts and the opportunity to work with state and federal government. But they're not grant programs. They don't just actually write checks to people. I don't know of any more about that. I do know of a couple of people, you know, in our CEO space community and otherwise who have a lot of information on grant programs. Sharita Herring comes to mind as being, you know, my #1 go-to gal when it comes to grant programs. But as far as I know, the federal government, the state government, they don't have any grant programs. They will offer in-kind services for mentoring and training, loan guarantees and tax credits, but that's about it. So hopefully that is helpful to you. We have time. It's almost the top of the hour. We have time for maybe one more question or one more comment from our attendees today. Stephanie, what do you got?
Okay. One more. What about programs for minority businesses and women-owned businesses?
I think I'll do an office hours presentation on that soon in the next few weeks. The government has a very extensive program for disadvantaged businesses. It calls the DBE program, which stands for Disadvantaged Business Enterprises, which encompasses those 5 different classifications of small business: minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, service-disabled veteran-owned businesses, and those businesses whose headquarters is in what they call a hub zone, or an area of the city or a country where it generally is economically depressed, and the government wants to encourage businesses to start there so that they can put more economic vitality into that particular area. So I think that's a longer answer than I'm able to have here in the next 2 minutes, but I will take that under advisement and perhaps do an office hours presentation on that. And if you need to have a one-on-one conversation, as with anybody on the call, if you want to have a 15-minute one-on-one conversation with me about any subject at all, you can just go to schedulepaul.com and find time on my calendar. I'm happy to take your appointment request and chat with you and offer a little bit of assistance. Until I get thousands of people in my tribe, as long as there's only a few hundred of you out there, then I have time during my week to have those 15-minute conversations and give back in the ways that I can give back. In addition to our office hours programs and our Awakened Conversations programs that we have, I also like to share as much as I possibly can with other time as well. So, that's my passion. As I say at the opening of every call, my passion is to accelerate the growth rate, increase the success rate, accelerate the growth rate, and reduce the struggle rate of small businesses in America. I'm doing everything that I possibly can to help you be more successful in your business. And until I talk to you again, hopefully this Wednesday on our Awakened Conversation program, and next Monday on the next office hours presentation, this is Paul Hoyt signing off and wishing you each a most marvelous and prosperous day. Bye-bye.